So my name is Raffi Kryszek. I'm the principal hardware architect, head of innovation at Proto. Started about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, and kind of charged with evolving the hardware, deeper integration with a really sophisticated software stack that we're really excited about, and kind of innovating, pushing the tech, whether that means miniaturization, different form factors, different footprints, and just overall improving the experience. I come from an entertainment background, particularly post-production visual effects, and with some kind of deep experience in engineering hardware, anything from automated retail to kind of entertainment specific hardware implementations for studios, things like that. And it all just kind of came together when I met David and the team, and they asked me to create something special for them.
So were you part of the team? We chatted with David. That design, there's a special way that you make it basically a live transmission, but there's so much data. He said you kind of have to do this special compression algorithm or something.
Yeah, that's right. So, we have a few governing principles behind everything that we do, and that kind of drives our engineering and design. One of them is simplicity. We don't have a lot of different cameras for our holographic capture, right? Like some people do. We have one camera, but a lot of processing, right? So what that requires us to do to keep the latency down is compress it, stream it to the cloud, and do what's essentially like a intelligent content delivery system designed specifically for our type of media. And then it transmits it to the devices and decodes on device. So you have this kind of complex dance of compression locally, streaming efficiently, spinning up nodes wherever geographically it makes sense, depending on the destination, then receiving them in the boxes and decoding them. It's pretty wild if you think about all of the steps.
I think they said that statistically 800 million people got the internet in the last 2 years, that on planet Earth, they never had connection. So are you
Yep.
building a future where I could beam myself anywhere around the world, basically?
That's exactly right. I mean, internet is becoming, a almost a human right, dare I say, the ability to connect with other people, right? That think of advents like Starlink, where now we're able to bring connectivity to places that never had it before. So what does that mean? It means let's kind of embrace that and understand that with that communication will change. And why restrict ourselves to either telephonic, text, or 2D like what we're having now? Let's jump on top of that increase in connectivity and bring people together holographically in a real sort of what I like to call a real present sort of way.
Is there a future where instead of working in my home office, which is super cool, don't get me wrong, I love my Dell multifunction monitor, super great. I could have 3D hologram Zoom meetings, if you will, as a normal course.
Absolutely. So, and there are a couple ways to utilize it, right? So it's just to see people, that feeling of presence, the non-linguistic cues that you just miss out from this kind of chest up two-dimensional view. It's also a great collaboration tool. Or let's say that we're communicating, but we're discussing something like an architectural plan, a special effect, a character design, something that would lend itself to volumetric visualization. We can now use our desktop unit as kind of a visual aid, fly around that object, engineer that widget or that handbag or that shoe, and let's see what it looks like in 3D space.
So would you say that your experience, my sense is that you kind of work in Hollywood in this capacity, right, with visual effects. Is that fair? Would this
Yeah,
did this shape you to where you can help proactively design a system that can handle this workload?
that's exactly right. So I come from an environment where kind of virtual visualization is kind of second nature, right? Whether or not that's from an end effect or for planning a sequence virtually or building a set virtually, it makes sense to me already, right? So now, how can we uh, elevate the experience, bring it to more people, and make it usable in a new way, in a new visual way, on your desktop or in a large device?
Well, I think that was one of the big questions when we first talked to David about this new invention. This was before even the Canadian patent came through.
Very loyal. We call ourselves protopians, protopians, because we really are a family. We believe in each other, and no, this company doesn't exist without every single one of them. The engineers, the operators, the producers, the behind the camera people. It is truly because of them that that guitar over my shoulder looks like it's floating inside that box.
A lot of this was hypothetical, and people would see. We just saw this amazing thing with Guardians of the Galaxy, a wonderful prank. I laughed out loud. Chris Pratt, pranking people at Disney.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for me?
What's your favorite ride?
Do you have any questions for me?
Yes. What is your favorite ride?
Guardians of the Galaxy, Mission Breakout.
That is also my favorite ride, so that's fantastic.
I am powered by a quantum computing AI technology. I know everything about you, Jen.
Oh, do you? What do you know about me?
I know that you just left Guardians of the Galaxy, Mission Breakout.
That was an easy one. That was a given. That was a given.
Have you ever seen Terminator 2?
Yes. Yes, actually, I have.
Skynet is real.
This is so great.
Laugh now.
Yeah.
That's super cool. And I think a lot of people still have maybe a misconception. Okay, sure, this is a prototype. This is 20 years down the road. There's no way I could afford this in my basement or whatever.
Sure.
But it sounds like this is actually coming into a consumer grade product now. Is that fair?
Yeah, so I would say that our primary use cases, our product categories right now are more enterprise driven, right? That's on account of the initial use cases and price point. But there is a world in the next, dare I say, 24, 48 months where pricing comes down. The software is developed in such a way that it is accessible within reach of a consumer market. We're not there yet, but we're working towards it. In terms of practical application, we're working towards that because it is being used practically. Yeah, you see the stunt on Jimmy Kimmel, our first kind of foray into late night, which is super cool. But we're doing really game-changing industrial magical stuff from, digital signage retail is the no-brainer, but Siemens, for instance, recently used it in Germany as a design collaboration tool, right? So they have engineers in different parts of the planet working together to assemble a battery.
Wow.
I think the press, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, a week ago or something like that, Olaf Scholz appeared.
Ja, und ich hoffe, dass das jetzt eine gute Möglichkeit ist, kosteneffizient, energiesparend Reden zu halten. Jedenfalls wäre das für Politiker mal noch eine neue Technik.
The Chancellor of Germany appeared in their proto, right? And that got the press, like, world leader beams in holographically. And I think that's cool. Don't get me wrong, it's really cool. But what I love is a practical application. They're using it as a tool. And that kind of bridges the gap from novelty to functionality. It's awesome.
I love that. And one thing that I'm curious about, does this mean things like, okay, you can have therapy sessions remotely, you can have mental health care for folks that are isolated, all these different, even surgery. Can you do remote surgery someday?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, remote surgery is done on the daily with Da Vinci devices right now, right? So now it's about how do you bolster the visuals? Right now they use goggles, right? But is there a world where you just have a holographic display in front of you and you're not constricting yourself? It's kind of one of our governing principles is no wearables to make the experience work. It is being used in medical applications right now. There are certain diagnostics that you need kind of more fidelity, more depth, a volumetric approach to assess someone's gait, their limited range of motion, things like that you don't get through a normal means of communication. So these are things being utilized right now. And I think you've been with us for many years now, and you've kind of seen the evolution, and we're really reaching a critical mass here of utility.
This is incredible. One reason I was so excited to talk to you, you have the knowledge, the technical knowledge. You're an applied scientist. I like, even better than the term engineer, you're an applied scientist. So ChatGPT, AI, all this happened after I talked to David. And I'm curious, how does it impact you? What do you see in your work as a result?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because we recently announced our first implementation of a large language model artificial intelligence in our systems. So this is how we see it. So many people are familiar with the conversational AI like ChatGPT and a number of other LLMs out there. Well, what does engagement look like with that right now? It's amazing. You type, right? You type, make me a poem or whatever, the plethora of prompts that you can input, right? Well, we're a visual computing platform. So how do we take that to the next level? Well, what we're doing, first step is personifying the AI, right? Let's make a thing, an individual, an ego that you can interact with. So now we have an avatar we're almost ready to show it, probably within this month even, I want to say. Our tests are really wild, really crazy, but now we're putting a face, a body, a holographic individual to ChatGPT. And what does that mean? That means that we can create a product evangelist, a product specialist that someone can engage face to face, have a conversation with. How do I join this to my iCloud account? What are the best shoes for running a marathon? We can build in that expertise into a humanoid avatar without having to program them because they're using AI. We'll be creating virtual artificial intelligent conversational characters. So imagine your favorite animated character or movie character coming to life in a way that you can ask it about it, and it just knows because of the deep canon associated with the film franchise. So we're doing really, really cool stuff.
That's amazing. So does this also mean, I'm thinking about customer service, right? I'm thinking about front end of stores. I'm also imagining, I used to work in IT, of course. And as a consumer, I've tried to use the phone lines for help, and it's been a horrible nightmare sometimes. It sounds like this is going to revolutionize. I feel like I've got a person there with me, but they have infinite knowledge and they're going to get the answer for me with my technical issue or what have you.
That's exactly right. So imagine Geek Squad without the humans. Right? You can engage with a person, whether you're little Timmy that wants to get their phone working or grandma that doesn't know how to check their email. Now it's done conversationally, it's done naturally. And I think that's the key behind all of this AI. It's intuitive to use.
On a technical level, how do you not just engineer and accomplish this, but how do you mind privacy, safety, security, make sure it doesn't start cussing someone out, all these different things?
Yeah, it's a good question, and frankly, a moving target that's evolving daily in the world of large language models, AI. The trust and safety provisions are a little different per implementation and the requirements of the customer, but we have tool sets at our disposal. Anything from prompt engineering to restricting the corpus of data from which the AI references, chat prompting, chat engineering, circumvention of trust and safety is a thing right now, and we have to be aware of it. And as good as we get at combating it, nefarious actors will probably try to overcome it. But all we can do is try to stay ahead and hope for the better angels amongst users from time to time.
That's kind of like, I think if you look at the history, people do diagrams of technology, and there's little dips where somebody does something bad, and then there's a huge rise, then there's a dip, then there's a huge rise. But overall, there's this progress, is what I'm hearing.
That's what I believe. That's what I'm hoping for. It is a new technology, and I like to think that it's going to evolve for the better and not for the worse. Good, not evil.
Right, see no evil. So,
yeah, we don't want evil holograms everywhere.
So I'm curious, on the puzzle level, you're a puzzle solver, right? You and your team. I'm curious, without giving away trade secrets, what's one of the things that you accomplished with your team that you're most proud of, where you're like, I can hang my head on this, like I did that?
Oh, that's easy. What I think I'm most proud of is the creation of its first of its kind holographic operating system. So as opposed to like one piece of hardware, which I'm very proud of, with a display tech, and then connecting computer and driving content to it in a certain way, we've developed an ecosystem, much in the way that iCloud is to Apple or the Android ecosystem is to Chrome. We've created an operating system ubiquitous across all of our hardware that is tailor-made for holographic experiences, whether that's live communication, playback of pre-recorded content on the schedule, like in a digital signage application. And now we're going to be launching our app store too. So we've really come full circle in creating the system, the hardware, creating an ecosystem around it, and soon we're going to unleash it to the world of developers to utilize the tool sets we've worked so hard to create in ways that we couldn't even imagine.
So I've got tons of friends that work in education, right? And one of the hardest parts of education is the repetitiveness. And I'm just so curious, can I start working on my French and German? Could I take math lessons? Could I get infinite tutoring from this personable avatar character? And suddenly that frees up all these other people for the hard teaching stuff.
That's absolutely right. I mean, we see that as an application not only for the AI, but also for the devices in general, for the live communication, right? So obviously an AI with baseline understanding in educating in law, in language, can interact in a conversational way. But also above that, and in the same device, by the way, you could have an expert in a field located in London and educate you in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And I think in real time, volumetrically, with a real sense of presence that's missing from like a video chat. And I think that's the special kind of magic of the tool set. It's everything all in one, and it brings things, to your doorstep that wouldn't otherwise be possible.
This is amazing. So I'm curious if this has come to fruition, because there was talk about this. Have you guys measured, and you're not the only company doing this, there's a lot of people interested, the impact of the hologram revolution on carbon, climate change, less air travel?
That's right. So because it is seen more as a replacement for being present, people can feel the presence without traveling there. And like you said, with that comes an impact to the environment, especially if it requires air travel, especially if it requires road travel, all of these things to get. If you think about the butterfly effect on the environment of me going to London, there's a lot of stuff that happens and it's not so great for the environment. If I can achieve the same net effect of presence without actually going through all of those steps, what an unbelievable benefit to the environment.
That's incredible. And of course, as a movie nut, I just discovered there's a wonderful independent film in Spain. There's this horror tradition, so I'm watching all these movies with the subtitles. And I'm also curious as a gamer, and people are very excited about The Last of Us, right? So you've got video gaming is even bigger than Hollywood, and they're working together. How does this invention, this hologram revolution, affect that entertainment sector?
Right. So a lot of entertainment over the years has kind of followed a visual medium, right? Start from board games to video games only possible with the television, high resolution video games only available with 4K and high processing capability devices, right? So now we've devised a new visual medium, a volumetric one that can be communally experienced. It's different than virtual reality. It's different than augmented reality. It's its own category. And, as I mentioned, the App Store, we're focused on creating a tool set, a platform, an environment for people to create all sorts of things. So as we reach out to the developer community, gaming, we imagine to be right there, one of the first case uses to be explored. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a device that's a touch screen and it's, has Bluetooth, Wi-Fi capabilities. So the way people interact with it will change and evolve, but fundamentally having that depth inside of the box, it's going to be special for gamers.
So I'm curious, maybe you can dumb down the science for me because you understand it way better than I ever will. What is being done with this device that is so unique? How the hell, pardon my French, do you create this three-dimensionality? And is this another step towards, I remember as a little boy watching Star Wars and you've got Princess Leia, right? Are we moving towards that?
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. That's right. I hear that a lot. Yeah, it is. So right now we're kind of constrained to the box. Why is that? So, when I mentioned earlier governing principles, one of our governing principles is no wearables and communal experience. So if you look at some of the competing technologies out there, obviously virtual reality, metaverse tech, you're living in the goggles in the world around you, right? So you can't experience it with somebody unless they're also in the same virtual environment. Same with the cumbersome kind of nature of the goggles. We wanted something different. I'm not knocking it, just we wanted something different. Some of the other hologram tech relies on eye tracking. So what that means is it creates a great experience for the individual, but it can only track one person at a time. So the moment you have two people standing, the experience is lost. It looks like kind of a blurry piece of content on a display. So we needed to have no wearable. We needed to be a communal experience. We needed to be streamlined. So with that, what's resulted is kind of what we call negative Z volume. So if you can think of the box, all of our volumetric content exists inside the box. They tell you to think outside the box, but we're thinking inside the box. And what that does is just increases the flexibility. So the kind of natural progression in the tech to get to that Star Wars moment is how do we remove the actual persinthium of the metal frame and have that in depth behind, a piece of crystal or a glass, and that's kind of what we're working towards.
That's amazing.
We have some cool stuff in the lab, not ready to show yet, but I'm cooking.
I love it. I love your cook. Well, you better keep us up to date as you invent things and release them. I want to hear about it. I loved reading as a kid the Isaac Asimov novels where he talked about some of this stuff. Okay. And in my head, I've always thought, I can't wait. Maybe I'll be 90 years old, but I can't wait for there to be not just volumetric appearance. It's haptic. You can touch the object. Are we getting close to that future as well?
I would love to, and it's not so far-fetched because we have displays with haptic feedback already, right? Think of the Apple Watch, right? You push on your Apple Watch and you get the feedback. So obviously the tech remains pretty small at the moment, but that's not to say that we're not bench testing it in larger form factors, right? So it's just a matter of scale and evolution. And on the touchscreen, you'll be able to get tactile feedback of that 3D model that you're manipulating, and it's going to be incredible.
That's amazing. Well, and I'm so curious, and I want to be respectful of your time, so I'll try to compressify a couple of questions.
Sure. And I can show you some things on the M too, if that's helpful.
Oh, I hope so. That would be amazing. I guess the biggest question I have, and I'd love to see a demo too, where do you think this is going to affect our friends in the digital signage and marketing industry, whether it's billboards, retail stores, you name it? Like, are those folks going to be taken care of as well?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a huge use case for us, and kind of like the first kind of how should I put it? One of the most obvious use cases. We're deploying it right now. Let's say H&M is a great example, right? So H&M is utilizing our devices as essentially a digital mannequin replacement, but so much more. It's alive. The mannequins are alive. They can show the garments and they can centrally manage them. So redressing a store window is a matter of programming it in the computer. So the trick that I tell the sales team a lot is that it's about educating about possibility. Digital signage is kind of, your typical 2D screen in a space that you push content to. It's often repurposed content from, print, or maybe it's a repurposed video spot, something like that. And now it's about educating into a whole new medium, getting ad agencies on board with understanding what it means visually. It's a little bit challenging to demonstrate without actually seeing it in person, right? But we're really excited about some large out-of-home display implementations that we're doing in major retail around the world. So H&M being kind of a small sampling, yeah.
Well, I'm imagining in my head going to the mall, in however long it takes. And oh, those shoes look cool, but what if they're not in my size? What would they look like in blue? I like blue better. Oh, wait, I can actually see in front of me. This is what it would look like.
Um, I'm very excited to be able to show that to you. It's something that we're working on with a major retailer that's not been announced yet. It's not public, but it's essentially just that, and not just with shoes. And it's going to be wild.
That's so cool. It reminds me of working at a mall many years ago. And one of the horrible headaches is the returns. People return so much, and that's not good for the environment. It's not good for the company. It affects bottom line. Do you think this will have a measurable impact on that area of retail?
Yeah. So why do people, in terms of returns, why do people return? It's not as they expected it, or doesn't fit, right? So visualizing something with our devices is going to become an invaluable tool. When I say visualizing, I mean our ability to visualize, let's say, a material change in the same SKU. I want these shoes in patent leather instead of, plastic, whatever the case may be. They'll be able to visualize that in a meaningful way right there on the device and be able to lend that to a purchasing decision. Next step is something that we're working on that's not ready yet. Very complex, more complex than you might imagine, is a virtual try-on. So now imagine our holographic device is essentially a holographic mirror. That is to say, you stand in front of it, you select a garment, and it does a scan of your body, and it lets you visualize holographically in front of you in that garment.
Life-sized.
In the Epic, it would be life size, and the M
Wow.
would be smaller, right? So this is roadmap, definitely something we're working on, and part of the challenge is that it requires deep collaboration with the brands, especially from the production side of the brands, to be able to replicate elasticity, pucker, draping of material, and we're excited to bring AI into the mix of that too. So it's all towards the value proposition, like you said, for the brands of minimize returns. Let's get them satisfied from onset as opposed to later on. And so we're excited to work on that.
Well, as a tech nerd, I hope you don't mind. Do you have like 2 minutes just to show us real quick a couple of things on this device? I've been
Yeah,
very curious.
absolutely. What kind of things can we show you? Let's see. So this is an art piece, right? It's kind of, and is it coming through okay? Sometimes exposure
Oh yeah.
is a little
Oh,
tough.
that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is key. We have such a sense of presence that we have performers doing stand-up comedy. They can interact with the audience. It's real time, and the audience feels like they're there. It's really wild. It's a product visualization.
And this is this 4K?
The smaller device is 1080, and the large device is 4K, and the resolution adjusts dynamically. So imagine this in the Epic, but it's the entire storefront window, right? So this is right there.
And this is where I think we covered that they did fitness classes of some kind as well through this device.
Yeah. I think this was in the Williamsburg store, right? And then they're going to be launching other initiatives. It was very successful and very popular for them. What's cool also about this is this device will go landscape. So for certain pieces of content that lend themselves to landscape visualization, you have that flexibility with the smaller device.
Wow. Now, help me understand, because in my tiny brain, I keep thinking about traditional LED. I think about pixels. What is happening in this box that makes it so unique and volumetric like that?
So it's a combination of the directionality of the light on the inside and the lensing on this cover glass and the transparency of the custom built LCD panel. So it's kind of a orchestration of a lot of things happening at once. that kind of give you the effect. Yeah.
So how long will it be before this becomes like every family has a TV in the house? Every family is going to have some form of hologram in the house.
Um, it's hard to say how long to put a timeline on it, but we expect consumer adoption to be within the next 24 to 48 months.
That's
So
fast.
with that said, it's gonna, we think, expand like wildfire.
Wow.
Especially as there are more tool sets, more of an app ecosystem, more developers coming up with things that we haven't even thought of yet, right? Like, I think it would be silly for us to think that we can think of every use case for this type of display tech, which is why we want to open it up to a developer community, much like the iPhone.
It's interesting because it's so novel and there's so many potential applications. I almost don't know what questions to ask because it's so futuristic.
Frankly, that's kind of our biggest problem, right? Because let's imagine for a minute the customer interaction. Every customer has a different use case, and we tailor the conversation to them because it accommodates so many use cases.
We've seen some interesting conversations, and there are some interesting players in this field talking about elder care and whether it's loneliness, which is a huge problem, and we're about to see a huge influx in the older population that needs care, but also in terms of dementia and Alzheimer's and so forth. Do you think this is also an application for the technology?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if you can see it, but we have a camera here. So it's, for people that can't be with their loved ones, they feel like their loved ones are with them. And that is priceless. We're seeing some really interesting early applications. We were talking about healthcare before, in autism. Interacting with autistic children in a visual way through animated characters, or something highly stylized has had a very positive impact that they're kind of researching now. And it's communicative, right? It's real time. You can engage with them in a conversation.
Now, is this just used to treat loneliness, or is it maybe a social behavioral training tool as well, education?
Exactly right. Exactly. Behavioral training, exposure, desensitization, that sort of thing.
That's power. Oh, is that Howie Mandel?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's an investor, right? As well as promoting it.
He's an investor, advisor, and he just loves using the thing.
How long until this 3D, true 3D, becomes the standard for television or movies? Or do you think that'll never happen? 2D is always going to have a place?
No, I think it'll have a place, especially when we're talking about the feeling of presence again. I know I keep coming back to it, but it's such an underlying principle. When we say telepresence, it's not presence. Presence is more than visual, it's a feeling. And when Howie does a stand-up bit, it's different when you're in the audience versus watching it on TV. And if that meaning is shared amongst others as they're exposed to tech, which I believe it will be, it'll be pretty quick when these are in the living room. There will be content creation enterprises built around bringing performers into that space right there, whether it's large form factor or small form factor on your counter. So I think that's going to happen pretty quick with the consumer adoption.
It makes me wonder, and I think Howie Mandel might have mentioned this on the Joe Rogan program, talking about this, but helping artists, writers, speakers make a better living by being in more than one place at once without having to travel could be a use case.
Yep. Because travel is expensive, and the environmental impact. Or if you're Howie, you just don't want to be around people, and so it's like, I mean, it sounds cliche, but how did the printing press improve education in the world? Well, now it was easy to get a book. If it's easy for an educator to be present with you, to educate you and to entertain you and to make you feel something, then people will learn more, feel more, and be better for it. And that's what we hope to be a small part of.
Well, it feels to me that you're trying to invent a better world with technology. And I'm curious if, just as an expert in the field who works in technology so deep, What would you say to the negative naysayers? And it's very popular to publish, in certain publications, these negative doomsday AI, 3D, it's all scary, it's all bad, it's going to take all our jobs. How do you respond to that kind of negative narrative, if you will?
I think that it kind of speaking to what I mentioned earlier, we operate under a core belief that in general, in aggregate, people are good. The things that they strive to achieve are good. So let's give them tool sets to do good, even if there's a small chance evil will be done. You're an Asimov fan, right? You got to teach the robot to not harm humans. So
Yeah, that always drove me crazy about the movie, because the book is the most optimistic robotics book you could ever read. It's so optimistic, and the movie's all scary.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, we have to operate under some assumption of positivity, and with any of these things, whether it's AI or deep fakes or whatever the case might be, we'll have to manage it, regulate it, but understand that we're doing all of this for the greater good, with the greater good in mind. And we can't live in fear and stifle innovation because of that fear.
Would you have any advice to offer, whether it's the politicians who are up in arms, whether it's the civilians trying to lobby? Like, how do we wisely regulate this exploding new field?
Oh, now we're getting into an interesting topic. I think that the biggest problem with our regulators is an unwillingness to learn about that which they are regulating. I mean, think about every time Zuckerberg testifies before Congress, and our lawmakers are asking him, if Facebook is free, how does it make money? There's just a baseline understanding that you have to have and you have to keep up with. I mean, AI in general, I don't think anybody's equipped to regulate that right now because it's evolving so fast, it's hard to keep up with. So my advice to anybody before you jump to a conclusion, whether you're correct or not, is engage in a deep exercise of learning, of understanding. And only then can you really understand what you're regulating.
If we put on your futurist cap for a moment, I'm curious, what are you most excited and optimistic about with all this new technology? What are you excited to see and use and have in your life?
I'm most excited today as what I was most excited about actually 10 years ago when I really started thinking about this stuff. It is access to information, right? Access to information, it's not that it's commoditized, but it'll become so simple, so kind of accessible to everyone, whether it's reading a website on your phone or having a generative conversation with an AI. Now it's about how humans will evolve into utilizing information as opposed to the exercise of seeking information, right? What is it going to do to the knowledge workforce if knowledge is accessible to all? It's going to mark evolution of humanity that we can't even think about right now. We don't even know what it's going to be, but I'm excited for it. We'll see.
I love that. You remind me of so many wonderful Walter Isaacson's verdict on these questions 10 years ago in The Innovators, which is still my favorite history of computing. Highly recommended to everyone. But we also talked to Dr. Micah Shippey recently, and he spoke of the same questions, and he said, look, I use Google Maps to drive to the grocery store, and that enhances my life. Let's expand that to, as you would say, knowledge work. You now have a power tool for knowledge work. It doesn't take you out of the equation. It makes you more useful and efficient, if you will.
Right. Exactly. I think it's fairly pessimistic to say that all of these tool sets will eliminate people from the equation. I think it will just make people more productive and free them for new innovations that haven't even been devised yet. If you're an expert in a field or passionate about a field, and you are now able to reduce the physical work to do that thing, it frees you up to do other amazing things that we can't even think of yet. More innovation, to come.
I love that. And I'll tell you, that's such a great way to kind of close the whole view of this exciting new technology. I'm curious, we have a lot of readers who maybe aren't super technical. They're not as into the technology. We've got business people, you name it, all ages.
Sure.
What would be your is there anything you want to share, a burning message for the ages, if you will, your summary of the whole issue that you just want, if you take one thing away, what would it be?
My big takeaway. That's a very loaded question. There's so much. How do I constrain it into like a soundbite? You know, we're working towards a world that is visually engaging, visually meaningful, and we want to bring heart and humanity to the digital world wherever you may be. And that's the future that we see at Proto. We see a world not constrained by geographic boundary or connectivity. If you want to be someplace, we can make it happen. And with that will come magic.
I couldn't phrase anything more beautifully. Well said. Well,
Thank you.